feel bad for you.
I don't think about you at all.
So last week we saw major social media companies attend a hearing on Capitol Hill, a hearing that culminated in Senator Hawley all but forcing Mark Zuckerberg into giving a pretty awkward apology to the families his products have harmed. As I watched, I couldn't help but think, how did it come to this? How did a group of people design, deploy, and continue to invest in technology that hurts so many people? Don't they feel terrible? For lack of a better question, how do they sleep at night? And immediately I thought back to Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street. You see, there's this one scene in the movie that has always stuck with me. Through all the outrageous excess and the unbridled indulgence and hedonism, there's a moment in the movie that, while often overlooked, I think encapsulate a key point of the film, or at least a very powerful idea that feels more and more familiar each day. To set the stage, The Wolf of Wall Street tells the rise and fall of millionaire stockbroker Jordan Belfort. Throughout the movie, we watch Belfort prove he is just an enormous piece of shit. He cheats on his 2 wives, he lies, he steals, he commits wide-scale securities fraud, insider trading, and market manipulation. By his own accounts, he's a degenerate gambler, alcoholic, and drug addict. And perhaps worst of all, he's proud of it. All of it.
I think it's interesting, too, that with no restraint, the civility goes. Having that power, I wonder if it's a story about something that's dark in all of us.
The movie exposes the dark side of Wall Street tycoons in the 80s and 90s, but as I mentioned before, there's one scene that offers us a window into the psyche of the more corrupt ultra-wealthy. And that is the Kimmy Belzer scene. It's the very beginning of Jordan's farewell speech, which hilariously ends with his declaration of,
"I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving!"
It's amazingly done. Leo is on his A game, and although only shown briefly, so is Stephanie Kurtzuba. Jordan begins his farewell speech by calling out Kimmy. He starts the monologue by informing us she wears $3,000 suits, drives a Mercedes-Benz, but that this is a long way from the broke single mother that came to him years ago asking for a job and desperately needing a 5K advance.
What'd I do, Kimmy? Go on, tell me.
You wrote me a check for $25,000.
That's right.
This answers so many questions about Belfort, and I think to a greater extent, it's Scorsese trying to show us how the wealthiest can justify their most unethical behavior if they've done something positive or charitable in the past. In psychology, this phenomenon is sometimes referred to as moral licensing. People with great confidence in their ethical self-image may be capable of committing truly heinous acts. During the speech, Jordan uses this one good deed to manipulate his audience and even himself into disregarding his lawyer's advice and staying in charge at Stratton. He can't be wrong. He can't be evil. He may be wealthy, but he's gracious unto others. Just look at Kimmy Belzer. He even tells his staff that he would have done the same for any of them. Clearly, the SEC is wrong. He is a good man, just misunderstood. Through the Kimmy Belzer scene, Scorsese shows us moral licensing in action. Even the most corrupt can overlook their wrongdoing because guess what? They've made their friends and family so rich. And those people they've made rich love them. Everyone is so good to me and happy at Stratton Oakmont. How could we be the bad guys? And if we don't do it, somebody worse will. Somebody who wouldn't help poor Kimmy Belzer. So as Jordan parades Kimmy to his staff as a symbol of his benevolence, the movie asks us, are Belfort's occasional displays of generosity genuine acts of redemption? Or are they calculated moves to maintain control over those around him? He doesn't seem to consider that he's manipulated the situation with his wealth, that he essentially bought Kimmy's loyalty and her silence on his misdeeds. Of course she's going to always back him, do whatever he says, and as she put it, fucking love him, because he's made her wealthier beyond her wildest dreams. And when we consider how paltry 25 grand is to someone with Belfort's fortune, can we even call the gesture generous? It's a scene that I think exists necessarily in the story as a cautionary tale about moral licensing and the corruptive power of money. If someone thinks they're doing something for the greater good, well, then they aren't going to see much of a reason to stop. Some corporate giants profit directly from causing harm to our nation's people, and no matter how many times we hope that the wealthiest leaders of said corporate giants will have their Tony Stark-esque ethical awakening and change their ways, we have to consider their perceptions. While he certainly looked uncomfortable giving his apology, the skeptic in me says I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg can return to Meta HQ and point to a dozen Kimmy Belzers. And much like Jordan Belfort, he may continue to decide that even if he's not perfect, he's the best person to be trusted with so much power. It's easy to believe that someone else would do worse. In conclusion, I'm afraid last week's hearings were another attempt to force the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world to see themselves as the villains, and to convince them to save us from themselves. But as Scorsese tried to tell us in The Wolf of Wall Street a decade ago, as long as these people are making lots of money for their loved ones, I'm not sure they ever will.